Nobody knew why the butcher had been slain. The unaliving took place in broad daylight, as he was working at a family-owned restaurant, one of many murders that would go unsolved in Celaya, one of Mexico's most violent towns. While a forensic expert strolled through tables still covered with the food left behind by customers who naturally fled after the shooting, his co-workers and relatives sobbed and drank tequila to soothe their emotions. Violence and absolute warfare are what these cartels bring to the public. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the recent Mexican cartel terror attacks and how the security forces are responding. Stay tuned to the end of the video to find out more. The tragedy in cities is part of the country's deteriorating security situation. Police in towns like Celaya claim that they're outgunned by criminal gangs in a losing struggle, while federal soldiers assigned to combat similar fights often arrived after the shooting has already stopped. According to many officials and analysts, the never-ending bloodshed, a sign of government losing control of the country, has been exacerbated by the transformative security strategy implemented by the current president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, now shortly after taking office, which gutted intelligence operations and has so far failed to stop the carnage. The Celaya market is where merchants claim that they are constantly being extorted by local gangs and cartels. Month after month, the bloodshed in Mexico has been unabated. Cartels and gangs were on the rampage throughout the 4 states in August, shooting at police and military, torching stores and cars, and closing down highways and businesses, including in Celaya. A few days later, the mayor's son was slain outside of a drugstore. More violence led schools and institutions in Zacatecas state to cancel courses. Mr. López Obrador has minimized the violence during his leadership, blaming it on past governments. Our opponents are exaggerating, the president declared during a recent press conference. It is staged and it is propagandistic. There is no significant issue, but they do want to seize the flag of violence. In Celaya, though, the restaurant assault was simply another afternoon violence. Everyone in this 500,000-person metropolis in central Mexico seems to know someone who's been slain or gone missing. In the first 4 months of the year, homicides in the city increased by 32% when compared to the same time in 2021. Volunteers from the community gather once a week to look for corpses. The government is seldom able to prevent violence or prosecute its perpetrators. Celaya was previously an affluent and tranquil city in Guanajuato state, connected to the United States by major national roads and railways. A thriving car industry enticed Japanese families to reside amongst its gorgeous colonial buildings, commuting to Honda and other foreign firms' plants. Foreigners and rich people are fleeing the violence, though, in this once bustling and tranquil city. Celaya, however, took a terrible turnaround 4 years ago, when one of Mexico's most powerful cartels, Jalisco New Generation, fought for territory with a local criminal organization. The local administration is now struggling to regain control of security, and many foreigners and rich Mexicans have fled. It is called the cockroach phenomenon, and they're crossing borders from one state to the next, said Victor Alejandro Aguilar Ledesma, the Catholic bishop of Celaya, of the cartels. He said that the violence prompted him to speak out, something that the church normally doesn't really do. The country has startled last summer when gunmen massacred 2 priests in northern Mexico. After a suspect they were hunting sought refuge in their church. The problem, according to the bishop, was the government's absence of a nationwide effective strategy, an opinion echoed by local police officers and the state's head of security. Mr. López Obrador famously said that his security plan would operate on the premise of hugs, not bullets, investing in communities to eradicate the poverty that causes crime, and dissolving the federal police to create an incorruptible, civilian-led National Guard police force. However, as a result of these reforms, Mexico lost over half of its intelligence capability to investigate and destroy the country's extensive criminal networks, contributing to the impunity that allows crime to flourish. How should the government proceed? Govern. What should a physician do? Look after the ill. What about a civil engineer? To build roads, the bishop urged. The president disputes that violence in Mexico has increased during the first half of his 6-year tenure, which ends in 2024. Homicides reduced by about 3% between 2018, the year he entered power, and at the end of 2021. But the cartel's reach has expanded. According to Mexico's Commission for Defense and Promotion of Human Rights, the violence triggered massive displacement events that forced 44,905 Mexicans to evacuate their homes last year. That is roughly a 5-fold rise from the previous year. Mexicans are becoming dissatisfied as the president prepares to make his annual State of the Union address. According to a study conducted by El Universal Daily, more than half of the respondents believe that federal government security plan has completely failed. When Mr. López Obrador abolished the federal police in 2019 due to recorded corruption, he established the new National Guard under civilian-led Ministry of Security and Citizen Protection to combat crime, and to allow for the government to remove the military from the streets. He's now anticipated to hand over command of that unit to the defense minister. So far, the National Guard has just failed to provide the protection that he promised. Many former federal police officers declined to join due to wage reductions. According to police officers, those who joined quickly departed because of former military leaders running the National Guard not considering them as equals. According to an American official who spoke anonymously to discuss sensitive information, the breakup of the federal police meant that Mexico's anti-crime investigation force was practically halved overnight. According to the source, the federal police had 10,000 investigators, whereas the National Guard, they only had a few hundred. According to Alejandro Hope, a security expert based in Mexico City, despite the fact that the National Guard is roughly triple the size of its predecessor, it only made approximately 8,000 arrests last year, compared to 21,700 by the federal police. Only 14 of the National Guard arrests originated from intelligence operations. Without good intelligence and investigative units, you'll always be putting out fires rather than preventing them from starting, said Cecilia Farfan Mendez, a University of California, San Diego, Mexico security expert. Senior Mexican leaders are also in agreement. The intelligence areas that the federal police had, they've practically vanished, said Sofia Huet Lopez, the Guanajuato state government's head of security. Here, the National Guard's work is just patrolling, she said, adding that in-depth investigations were required to bring down the criminal groups. The municipal police force in Celaya, like in many other Mexican cities and villages, is insufficient. According to UN recommendations, a city the size of Celaya should have a police force of 2,300. Instead, it's got 900. Inés Rivera Peralta, Celaya's Secretary of Security, claimed that he had sought to root out bribery and had just discharged 200 police personnel for corruption and bad performance. According to the United Nations, recommended police per capita ratios, the municipal police force in Celaya, like in many other Mexican cities and municipalities, it's insufficient. Again, corruption is pervasive in most of Mexico. 2 Celaya cops were asked to remain anonymous in order to talk freely, and they complained about discovering cocaine in bags with cartel insignia inside their supervisors' cars. With a regular influx of firearms imported from the United States, where gun purchases rules are more permissive, the gangs outgun the Celaya police. Grenades have been thrown at police patrols in recent months. A scene of absolute warfare, said Edgar Garcia Carrillo, an emergency department doctor at the city's primary hospital, describing a shooting that killed 8 people. He thinks that the number of violent injuries has risen in the previous 4 years. I've never been in a war, but it sure feels like it here, he remarked. The remains of a young lady and man were discovered in an empty field last week, with the odor of decomposition drifting into a neighboring neighborhood and military prep school. Residents and security personnel stood by while a forensics professional in a white zip-up hooded garment photographed the decaying cadavers. Soldiers from the National Guard are leaving the scene where 2 bodies are discovered, dumped in a field in the outskirts of Celaya. Following the outbreak of violence in Mexico in August, officials from one of Celaya's major high schools met with Mr. Rivera and his senior security officers, pleading for more protection from criminals who harass pupils on their way to school, stealing and selling narcotics. "Can a surveillance unit be set up nearby?" inquired Maura Martinez, a school administrator. "We have a dream, but how realistic is it?" "The issue is that security checkpoints have recently become a slaughterhouse for officers," said Edgar Chavez, a police commander, adding that they will do everything that they can to strengthen security. Killings in Celaya increased from less than 80 in 2010 to more than 800 in 2020, and hundreds have gone missing. Olympia Montoya's brother and a friend, an off-duty police officer, went missing one day in 2017, and there has been no trace of them since. The authorities shrugged off the disappearance when her family reported it, alleging, without proof, that the two men were in a secret relationship and they'd fled off together. It took 5 years for government forensics professionals to gather all of the DNA from the family in order to check whether it matched any unexplained remains. Ms. Montoya had given up hope of finding her brother alive, but she wants to recover his remains and give him at least a decent funeral that she and her parents can attend. What are the chances that the Mexican government is going to take the steps that are necessary to stop this violence in Mexico? Let us know down in the comment section below, and if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any of our incredible videos. Keep an eye out for the next video, and bye for now.